Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. So yesterday we learned about the standard and the wild formats that are going to be happening in Hearthstone pretty soon, and I mostly went over just kind of like the macro details about the stuff that's actually going down, but I didn't really talk about the implications, what kind of decks, what kind of cards are going out, and how this works, and what we can really expect when we're going to play the standard format, because, well, it's something we haven't really experienced. But I feel, I've gone into all the details, I've seen what other people have said, and all in all, my impression is that we're basically going to play some form of like permanent challenge stone. It's going to be something that you guys will see here. I'm going to go over all the cards. You're going to see that everything seems to be slowed down a little bit. You're going to see that, all the ridiculous death rattle minions that we've had to deal with for almost the entire lifespan of Hearthstone are suddenly gone, and it's going to be a whole different game. So what will that game look like? So the first thing I want to talk about is Blizzard, specifically Ben Brode, talked about how there's going to be nerfs, of course, in the standard and basic cards, and they also hinted at like some buffs. They basically want to make changes to the original set because they want to solidify that and create an identity for all the classes from it. So first I wanted to go over some of the buffs and some of the nerfs that I think will happen, and I have quite a good degree of confidence in these. So first we see the buff front runners out of the classic and basic set. We have Savagery. Savagery is absolute garbage. Once upon a time it dealt its damage to the entire board of the enemy, including the hero. So it used to be insane. Now it's terrible beyond belief. So, something should change with this. Maybe you do like twice the damage, or maybe you can make an AoE effect once again. I don't know, but it really sucks, and it used to be a really cool card. Totemic Might, again, we tried to develop some kind of identity for Shaman. I tried to create that discussion a few weeks ago, and Totemic Might is an opportunity. If you give your totems, let's say, more than 2 health, 3 or 4, let's say, or you can even make it cost mana at that level, maybe you can actually have this super totem synergy identity in the Shaman class, and a lot of that is there from the TGT set. And Warsong Commander is really the card that identifies how Blizzard nerfs cards. Blizzard doesn't just, nerf cards to a point of balance. When Blizzard nerfs cards, they make it so nobody will ever use that card or even think about using that card in a constructed deck ever again. I think they went a little bit too far. Definitely followed those lines when they nerfed Warsong Commander in the last few months. So I think it could actually be a little bit better than that, and I'm really hoping that it is, because the Warrior base set is really crap. And then we have Nozdormu. Nozdormu is a card that for the longest time I thought had an amazing effect, but just couldn't be played because of its terrible stats and way too high mana cost. So I'm hoping that at least a few of these get buffed, but I think we can safely assume that at least a couple of cards will get buffed, because it's a really good opportunity. If they're ever going to make changes, it's going to be right now. Now, for the nerfs, I think these are definitely the cards that they're going to look at. They said that they're going to look to nerf at least 2, but no more than 20 cards. I think 20 was a bit laughed at. So it's probably like a handful or maybe a few more than that, kind of what I think here. So the combo druid is definitely the biggest culprit of things that are out of balance. The combo in the druid class has been class defining and abusive and not fun since the very start of Hearthstone. So it's finally time. We finally have a great opportunity to remedy this, and Druid can actually be like a play bigger minions type of class, with some of the other things involved, as you'll soon see in this video. So the best way to do it, I think, is to nerf Savage Roar. Savage Roar is a bit more of a broken card than the other piece of the combo, because it can be used in just generally aggressive decks. Putting it at like 1 or maybe 2 more mana, you can have a slightly different effect, maybe more than 2 attack, but just to make it so you can't use those 2 cards together because it's just too broken. Keeper of the Grove, I think cards that Blizzard has nerfed in the past are ones that are included in basically every single deck. I can guarantee you that anyone who's ever made a Druid deck has had 2 Keeper of the Groves in it, except 1 or 2 decks that have generally been pretty unsuccessful. Ancient of Lore, very similar case, just, absolutely broken. I really wouldn't be surprised if this card was nerfed. Same with Knife Juggler. Knife Juggler just feels a little bit broken right now. While a lot of the Death Rattle minions are leaving, and the Death Rattle minions are largely what make Knife Juggler ridiculously powerful, there are still some other synergies in the game that will exist permanently, in fact, because Knife Juggler combos off of a lot of basic and classic cards as well, that I think it's due time to nerf Knife Juggler so they can create more interesting cards that have low health. Or they can create cards that spawn a bunch of stuff. Just basically, Knife Juggler kind of makes a lot of cards a bit too dangerous to create, and if we nerfed him or just completely destroyed Knife Juggler, there'd be much more room to design cards in, and I think that's a pretty big deal. Then we have Big Game Hunter. Big Game Hunter is certainly one of the biggest culprits of not fun in Hearthstone. It makes it so anything that's over 7 or 8 mana needs to have ridiculous ability, ridiculous on-board presence immediately, ridiculous value. Just it's so hard to make a good big minion solely because of this card that it really needs something to go wrong with it. I don't know how you fix Big Game Hunter. Some people suggested that you could make Big Game Hunter just do a set amount of damage rather than outright killing minions with 7 or more attack. And that could be a pretty cool fix, but that would probably kill the card. But again, that might not be too bad of a thing. And because I am fairly confident that they will nerf Big Game Hunter in some way, I also think Alistraza is a bit broken. It just, setting someone's health to 15 is just kind of dumb and non-interactive when you're playing a combo deck that you just want to mass up pieces. Just there's too much stuff all at once, and if the card can't be punished immediately, which I suspect it won't be punished immediately because we're probably going to see Big Game Hunter nerfed, that's a little bit broken, so I wouldn't be surprised if that card was adjusted a little bit, and it wouldn't need more than just a little bit of adjustment. Setting someone's health to like 18 or something I think is actually pretty good, or maybe just upping its mana cost by 1 would work. Then we have Molten Giant. Now, all these cards that cost 1 less mana based on a certain situation are a bit crazy, and Molten Giant is no exception to that. In fact, he is probably the biggest culprit of ridiculous mana reduction cards. So probably the best way to change Molten Giant is just to increase his mana cost by just, maybe 2, something like that, just to make it so it's going to be a little bit easier to burst someone down who gets a free board full of Molten Giants. And that's also important because the main way that people dealt with Molten Giants so far is with crazy burst and with super sticky boards. Well, as you'll soon see, super sticky boards are going to be going away, so it might be very difficult to otherwise deal with that card. And these are the standard neutrals that are going away. There's obviously more than these. If you guys haven't kept up with the news, Naxxramas and Goblin vs. Gnomes are going to go away once the new set comes in early spring. And, that should be pretty exciting. And I believe that the new set will fill the void out of a lot of stuff that's going to be leaving. But in general, there's a few things that may not exactly go that way. So Zombie Chow's going away. Haunted Creeper's going away. Mad Scientist is going away. Boy, is that going to hurt Mage and Hunter. We have Death Lord. That's going to screw up Priest big time. What else do we have there? Sludge Belcher. Sludge Belcher is going to be a really big loss for a lot of the control decks, but with not so much super sticky Death Rattle minions being in play, maybe you won't need that powerful of a taunt minion. Loatheb is going away, and that's pretty sad. I'll talk about that at the end. Mech Warper, all the mechs are going away. All the mechs are in GvG, basically, so the mechs are just gone. Nobody's going to play a mech deck in Standard, and Mech Warper is basically the source of that. Hobgoblin is going away. Hobgoblin existing kind of makes it so Blizzard can't really make very powerful cards with 1 attack. So even though it's such a cool card to keep things into balance, which is probably what they're going to try to do in Standard, well, they have to shift the card out, so that's probably a good thing, because on Mystic is going away. It's going to make it so it's going to be pretty difficult to actually beat some of the mages, and that card is going to be pretty interesting. Piloted Shredder's going away. Holy crap, thank God. Finally, we're going to have balanced 4-drops that can actually be removed with 1 card. Antique Healbot is going away. I suspect the new expansion is going to introduce some more type of healing, because Antique Healbot just kind of breaks things a little bit, but at the same time, it dilutes the class specific healing abilities like Paladin and Priest, or like the big healers. So without Antique Healbot, perhaps you'd want to play those classes because of their healing potential, where now you mostly play whatever you want because of Antique Healbot. So that, maybe not. And Dr. Boom is going away. don't craft the dude. And then I want to go through just some of the classes so you can see how these this exodus of expansions is really affect them. So first we have Druid. Looks like Druid didn't get any good cards in GvG or Naxxramas. Oh well. Hunter got Web Spinner and Glaive Zuka, so those are exiting. But Hunter's mostly losing from the fact that Mad Scientist is not going to be in the game anymore. But I think Hunter's going to be very powerful, because they have very, very powerful classic and base cards compared to some of the other classes. Mage is losing Flame Cannon, Unstable Portal, Snow Chugger along with all the other mechs, and Goblin Blast Mage. Basically, Mech Mage is gone. I still suspect some form of Freeze Mage will be viable, because in Classic it was viable, and I don't think it'll change a lot more of the controlling decks too much, and board clears, which Mage has quite a specialty, are actually going to be very significant. As we saw, most of the big Death Rattle cards are out. So board clears will actually clear the board unless Blizzard makes another dozen of ridiculously overpowered Death Rattle minions, which please don't do that. Just don't. And we have Paladin. Paladin, the secret Paladin that you're facing on ladder right now is basically dead. No more Shield the Minibot, no more Coghammer, no more Muster for Battle, no more Avenge, and a lot of the neutral cards are going away as well that they really took advantage of. So Paladin's going to go back to the style of more mid-range, more slow play, like the Control Paladin. Some of them are going to use Giants, that kind of stuff. It is a pretty effective deck, specifically when the game is slowed down quite a bit. So yeah, I'm hoping that actually happens. And then we have Priest. Priest seems like it's losing a lot. It's losing Dark Cultist, it's losing the Naru Shrinkmeister, Velen's Chosen, and Light Bomb. Light Bomb is really the only big one because board clears gain so much value once minions actually die when you kill them once. So the loss of Light Bomb kind of overshadows all the other cards that you're losing. But even though these cards are super powerful, if you've ever really tried to make your own creative type of Priest deck, you've noticed that there's too many cards that you actually want to put in the deck, and there's not enough room for them. So I don't think Priest will be in too bad of a position, just because there are so many similar options. And the main point to understand is that the power level of the typical deck is going to go down quite substantially, especially when it comes to the aggro in the first few turns. So that is a big advantage, specifically for the well-established control classes like Priest. So I think Priest will stabilize as well. Rogue is losing Tinker Sharpsword Oil, which is the main card in the existing Rogue deck, so that kind of sucks. But how do you fix that? Well, you just give him an okay weapon or another okay weapon buff card. This is the easiest thing to fix. So I suspect the new expansion that's going to phase out GvG and Naxxramas is just going to give Rogue exactly that. And yeah, it won't be too big of a deal. I think Rogue might actually be one of the strongest classes, despite a lot of people showing pessimism towards this card being taken away. It's Rogue's actually in a really good spot. Rogue has a lot of very efficient removal, and the main issue that it had is, well, everything had Death Rattle, so the efficient removal was just not that efficient. But with those cards gone, and Blizzard probably not making too many more of them from this point on, Rogue is actually going to do amazingly well to curve out all the aggressive decks that are going to come up after the expansion launches. Then we have Shaman. Aggro Shaman is basically dead. No more mech, no more Crackle, no more Power Mace, just gone off the map. We're probably going to see Shaman more of a mid-range approach similar to Paladin, but because it doesn't have the heals and it's losing anti-heal bot, Shaman's going to need quite a bit of help to catch up, but it doesn't have to be many different cards. Shaman just needs one or two really powerful class cards, and I think it will be a pretty balanced class once again, because Shaman is one of the big victims of the super aggressive Death Rattle meta that we've had for the last 2 years in Hearthstone. When it can't get anything on the board, Shaman's 90% of its cards are win more. Well, you just can't win more because you're losing at the very start of the game. And we have Warlock. Warlock's losing Dark Bomb, Implosion, and then Void Caller Mal'Ganis. It's not a big loss. People aren't really playing that stuff. But, with the powers scaled down, it'd be pretty nice if you could play the Void Caller and Mal'Ganis, that kind of stuff. But you can't. Implosion is obviously the biggest loss, but I feel like Zoo Warlock might be one of the strongest aggressive or Zoo type of decks still. So I don't think it's going to be too big of a loss. Again, it's basically going to make Zoo quite a bit crappier than it is right now, but everybody is dropping in power level. So in in the relative sense, I think Zoo Warlock is still going to be very good, and I think like Control Warlocks, like Hand Warlocks, are actually going to be a bit overpowered unless they nerf some of those cards as a result of that. And we have Warrior. Warrior's losing Shield Maiden and Death's Bite. I actually worry for Warrior the most because Death's Bite is like the single auto-include card that you actually use in every single Warrior deck. But it's not because, yeah, it is overpowered and all that stuff. It's because you need it. You need something like that to trigger Whirlwinds. You need a good weapon on 4. A lot of the weapons they've introduced since have just been absolute crap. So Warrior is going to need, again, quite a bit of help to actually make it through and still remain as one of the top classes in Constructed. So there's that, but there's also another implication. With GvG going out, we saw a lot of the mechs leaving, and there's a few concepts that are pretty interesting to look into. So here I have all the standard mechs. What we can see from the standard mechs is that, well, there's basically none of them. And that is a little bit of an issue, in fact, because when it comes to like GorillaBot, its discover effect is not going to discover cards that are not currently in standard. So when you play GorillaBot, first you need to have a mech, which good luck with that, by the way. And then when the effect actually triggers, you're only going to get 3 out of those 5 cards. And they actually have one thing in common. They all suck. So yeah, there's this whole issue with like the tribes not really working out too well. And it's very difficult for Blizzard to, constantly be pumping out tribal cards. Like, I don't think Blizzard's actually going to be able to keep like the mech theme alive in the standard format. I think from this point on in expansions to come, we might actually see some more diverse tribes. We might see a lot of new tribes, but I think tribes will continue to be just structured within its own set rather than like mechs, which have a few there, and dragons kind of the similar case, but most of the synergistic dragon cards were in the same block. It's a bit difficult to say, but I think it is going to be too big of a challenge, in addition to balancing all the stuff in general, to make sure that there's enough mechs and enough beasts and enough this and enough that to actually continue to pump up, cards that work as a tribe. So that's pretty important to realize. But the last thing I really want to go over is from removing Naxxramas and from removing GvG from the game, all these death rattle minions are going away. All these like stupid cards that I've hated for the longest time are going away. So I think overall the game will improve considerably. But there are a few casualties here, and I did mention a few of them. So the first one's like Loatheb, right? So Loatheb, in my opinion, is one of the most amazing cards that Blizzard has ever made. And Blizzard has mentioned that they have no intention to reprint cards. So, if they're not going to reprint Loatheb, how do you take that? Are they going to make like a miniature Loatheb? Are they going to make a bigger Loatheb? Probably not, because it is a legendary minion effect, so it doesn't really feel too legendary-like if it actually exists on like an epic card or a rare card. So I think the best solution to this is actually, I don't know, maybe they have considered it, but maybe putting Loatheb from the GvG block into the classic block. Like there's not, like, who really cares about this small bit of lore? I mean, there's shit that could be in Naxxramas in the basic set anyway, right? Who really cares? But in terms of like a competitive standpoint and like a cool strategic standpoint, it would be so great if Loatheb was actually part of the forever standard set, because it's one of those tools that is so amazing to use and so amazing to actually plan and win a game through. And the other one that I wanted to mention is if they do want to take the other route on like the tribal thing, if they do want to make like mechs an ongoing thing along with some of the other tribes or some of the future tribes, you kind of need a few of these to be added to the base set. So like Mech Warper is pretty important. Like if you have Mech Warper, it doesn't matter how terrible some of the mechs are, you still might use some of them, and it's like an enabler card. So, this kind of got me thinking that I think there's a really good chance that Blizzard will, over time, periodically add cards to the classic and base set to manipulate standard in a very efficient way, and basically to have the better tools to balance the environment without reprinting cards, which is something they said they would not do. So that's where we're at. all in all, if I take a look at these changes, I think most of the issues can be easily fixed with just a few powerful additions from a new expansion. Probably the class that I feel is going to struggle the most is going to be Warrior, but again, if it just gets like 1 or 2 very powerful cards, it's not going to struggle at all. It might be actually just the best class in the next expansion. So I think the way this is structured, I think the way this is set up, if we see another expansion and the expansion is not on the ridiculous power level that it was in GvG, if we see another expansion like the Grand Tournament, we're going to have a really amazing playthrough of Hearthstone. We're going to have a game that has very few outliers, very few ridiculously powerful cards. We're going to have a game where you actually have, the first 3 or 4, maybe 5 turns of the game to develop whatever strategy you actually want to play, rather than struggling to catch up with minions that you have to kill 3 times and you basically losing from turn 1 or 2 because you don't have answers to certain cards. The game is going to be fundamentally different, but it's going to be fundamentally different in such a good way, and it is a way that some people, like myself, have experienced. Like 2 years ago, Hearthstone was this game, and I feel this is what they're striving to create once again, and I think this is something that a lot of the players who haven't played back then, who have started playing Hearthstone since Naxx and whatever expansion afterwards, haven't yet experienced, and specifically to those people, I think you're going to find Hearthstone a much, much better game than you have experienced up to now. So overall, I'm hugely optimistic about these changes and these announcements, and really a lot of it lies on the expansion to come. Maybe that news is coming pretty soon as well, I don't know. But, as long as Blizzard doesn't screw that up, we're going to have a great new era of Hearthstone. So I hope you guys are as excited as I am for that, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.